Next, we'll hear from Martin Hoshino as the Administrative Director's report.
Thank you, Chief. Members, observers, and listeners. I would like to take you through some of the elements of the written report, as I usually do, as well as give you an update on the state budget. But first, before doing so, I wanted to take a moment to publicly acknowledge and congratulate and thank the new director of our Center for Judicial Education and Research, Karene Alvarado, who is in the audience today. As many of you know, we have been searching for a new director for this important and nationally recognized center here at the Council. We did get applicants from all across the nation owing to its national reputation, but luckily for us, we were able to find right here at home in our own midst, in our own ranks, without a doubt, the most qualified person that was available to us. Karene, if you don't know, has been with us in that program for about 16 years. I think I have that right. But in that 16 years, it's, I think, fair to say that Karene has probably participated, had a hand in, been an architect as well as developer on just about any element of the curriculum that's in that well-established program. And so you couldn't really find anybody that was more qualified. And so we concluded our search. It was actually quite quick, and I wanted to welcome her as well as congratulate her and wish her the best. Thank you very much, Karene. And so members, as always, in your materials is the written report that archives the activities that are in support of your goals and your objectives. And it's contained there in your materials. This particular report includes a summary of the information on the advisory committees that have occurred between the last meeting in March and this one, and there have been about 20 or so of those committee meetings in the reporting period. The updates cover a lot of ground on the work that is occurring, and it's an expansive range, as it always is, of judicial administration issues, which includes child support guidelines, evaluation of mental health legislation, and development of intelligent court forms, to legal help centers, the grant fund activity, and just yesterday, the Court Facilities Advisory Committee meeting, where the committee's discussion was bearing upon the important next steps related to updated seismic risk assessments in support of our courthouses. And also, since the last council meeting, there's been almost 50 different education programs, trainings, and resources for judges, court personnel on a myriad of topics, including courtroom simulation of jury voir dire and to improving permanency outcomes. Now, as we all know, it is in the last throes of the budget season in California with lots of activities, and so the report also talks about some of the advocacy efforts that have been occurring related to our branch budget for the fiscal year that is coming up here in July 1. I want to provide a brief recap, at least, of the elements that are in the Governor's May revision. It will be brief because it isn't all that different from what we saw in January. The budget, as proposed, contains $3.6 million roughly for the branch at large. This is about 1.9% of the total state budget and about 1.3% of what we commonly talk about a lot in California, which is the general fund, which comprises the major part of the budget. There are no reductions proposed for the judicial branch, even though a $3.3 billion deficit or so is projected for the next fiscal year. This is positive for us to a point, and negative to us to a point in that last year there were a number of pieces of legislation and bills that were passed, as well as propositions passed by the voters that impose additional work demands and workload on the courts, and those are not funded in this particular budget. And so although it is proposed as it was last year, again, there are additional burdens that are imposed on the courts, which we will have to struggle with and continue to. The positives are that the budget does maintain $35.4 million in new funding from the initial January proposal. This is a recognition of some of our general cost increases as well as our technology initiatives. Another positive is that it adds funding for enhancing our IT infrastructure for a statewide e-filing initiative and the migration of the Judicial Council services to a state fiscal system, as well as the implementation of the appellate document management system. Another positive is that the administration continues its commitment to backfill our trial court trust fund for revenues that are eroding related to filings, fees, and assessments. There is also a recognition by the administration, not written or contained in the budget, but a recognition and commitment made to us that in the event that there would be fiscal impacts associated with the driver's license suspension proposal that is contained in their budget, that they would provide relief through some of the existing budget processes and tools that they have. And so that is a welcome recognition or acknowledgement by them to us. There's also some provisional language included to limit the amount the State Controller's Office is allowed to charge trial courts for audits, and that concludes kind of the positive pieces and the elements of the budget. So what happens next? The Chief's budget statement after the release noted the proposed funding is not enough. The California court system is receiving little more than a penny for every general fund tax dollar, and the message here is that the impact of chronic underfunding and the absence of stable funding, courts really simply cannot maintain the service levels and access for the public that they have today. California courts, regrettably, are not alone in this problem. The general fund is the primary source of funding for just about every court system in the nation. And this is pretty much the same story nationally, where budgets for the judiciary comprise only a fraction of state spending, and yet they are expected to effectively and efficiently deliver constitutionally insured services to the public. It continues to be a fundamental central message for our sister branches is that we need greater funding stability in order for us to fulfill our constitutional responsibilities. So the advocacy efforts between now and the end in the next few months is going to continue to need strong support from all of you here at the council members, as well as court leaders and stakeholders and partners throughout California. We have our budget snapshots that are in the legislature. We have a lot of testimony that's been occurring, and I would encourage everybody to keep it up and to continue to highlight the real world vulnerabilities and impacts of a chronically underfunded judicial system. This is impacts on foster kids, families, unrepresented litigants, limited English speakers, the elderly, veterans, and the list can go on and on and on. But in terms of where we are right now, we've had 2 committee hearings immediately behind the May revise that happened this last week that were ably supported and attended by our staff as well as members in the system. And we have another set of hearings, I think 2 or 3 that are already scheduled for next week. And the focus now is on all of the committees and the actions they take and the actions they do not take as we work our way toward the June 15th constitutional deadline. We will do our best to keep you apprised in real time. The council will not be meeting again prior to the conclusion of this budget, and so we will update you at the July meeting when you will be asked to make decisions related to the allocation of whatever or wherever we end up in terms of the appropriation from the state of California. And with that, Chief, it concludes my report to the members.
Thank you, Martin.